We're going to open this session with one of the critical issues of the nature of the BBC, namely its funding. We're just going to have a very simple, so to speak, for and against public funding.
In principle, what's the best way? And in practice, what's the best way of funding the BBC? Now, there are four possible revenue streams that you can look at to fund a public broadcaster. A license fee, government grant, advertising, and subscription. And all of these are combinable with each other, which actually is the norm in most countries which have public broadcasters. And all of them like to imitate the BBC's success in generating commercial revenue from its broader activities, particularly distribution. For a long time in this country, one of the arguments in support of the licence fee has been the purity of it as a funding mechanism. And it's true that the BBC's public service channels carry no advertisements, just the commercial channels it part owns and fully controls. However, it's not quite as pure as that. The second argument in terms of purity is that the licence fee allows the BBC to concentrate on quality, not ratings. Sadly, the overwhelming evidence is that the opposite applies. The BBC monitors audience share and reach very closely, not least because it feels that any weakening of performance on those measures would put the licence fee in jeopardy, a paradoxical result of licence fee funding. The other argument of principle that attaches to the licence fee is that it gives the BBC a moral purpose. In theory, that might be true, but in practice, that moral purpose is often very hard to find. But is there any alternative? That's the practical question, which I think is actually more important. Subscription has been opposed by supporters of the licence fee for two reasons. The first is that it allows people to avoid paying for the BBC altogether if they so choose. That way, they might end up losing out on valuable content. Yet the time when the man in Whitehall knew best is surely long past. As both Greg Dyke and John Burt have said in the past, the likelihood is that the BBC would thrive under a subscription system, which would also have the major side benefit of ending the prosecution of so-called evaders. Non-payers would simply not be able to see BBC channels unless they were showing unencrypted public service content.
The first point I'd like to make is that I think he completely dodges the issue of universality. Originally, the BBC was in effect paid for by subscription, but what seems to have happened is that so many people wanted to subscribe to TV and radio that it became a universality of provision. Everybody was paying for something which everybody had. Now, the point is, were they paying for something that they had by choice, or were they paying for something which we as a society believed that they ought to have? I don't want to sound paternalistic, I couldn't really, could I? But I think we have got to look at what we as a culture and a society believe should be provided to all of our citizens. And I would like to make a case for saying that an objective news on the media, on TV and radio, should be provided to all our citizens, in a sense, whether they want it or not. You don't know you need it till you need it, and thank God it is there, and the BBC provides it, and it is the benchmark for news and information provision in this country. It is universally provided, and therefore it should be universally paid for. So the issue then is, how do you pay for it? Do you do it through a licence fee, or do you do it through a subscription mechanism? Quite frankly, ultimately, I don't really care. I think a lot of what David has said is absolutely fascinating, but it's quite arcane and it's to do with payment systems. However, we have the licence fee. It's based now, though not originally, on universality of provision of media, and therefore I would maintain that as we've got it, we might as well keep it.
The licence fee is attached to the Charter. They are interconnected elements in the whole system of British broadcasting. The Charter has to be renewed. And there's a huge democratic process which goes with the rechartering of the BBC every single time, and with that goes the decision about the licence fee. And the democratic element of it needs enormous improvements. It needs to be readjusted for modern times, 100 different ways in which it should be done, and arguably that will happen in the course of the next generation. But those two things go together, and if you lose the licence fee and the Charter, you do lose the whole sense of belonging that the British people have to this unique broadcasting system. The licence fee has survived it leads to a pretty good institution. I think we should just leave it where it is and leave various necessary changing elements to develop decade by decade.